me having a bad day is going to be different than somebody else having a bad day. I had to learn that, right? Especially having employees. A single mom, that doesn't feel well, and she's cleaning up throw up and the dog got out, or you know what I mean, like, and they're just like, oh, I'm having the worst day ever. And it's like, there's no one shooting at you, there's no bombs blowing up anywhere, you're not in like, what do you mean you're having a bad day? Do you understand? So it really took me a long time to understand the perspective of other people.
Today, I am excited to welcome Chris Libutti to the show. Now, so Chris, as you'll hear, he's written a book, and the book has got a really cool name, The 7R Squared Framework. Now, for those in the Six Sigma world don't know, we're not talking about R squared statistics and all that kind of stuff, but the 7R Squared Framework. So there's 7 R's and they're doubled up. For example, rigorous research is the first one. And so what we do is we definitely get into the book and we go through all of the R's, if you will, the 7 different R squared groupings there, and talk about what each one of them is and what it means. But at the beginning of the episode, I sort of really wasn't the plan, but I'm fascinated by folks that were in special operations, which Chris was. And so I just sort of pried, you never know like what kind of questions you can ask folks and what they can answer and all that, with top security and all that sort of thing. But anyhow, we had some really cool conversation just on his time in special operations, and heard a little about some of his deployments and some of the things that they did and that sort of thing. So, but then as you'll hear, he's a super disciplined guy, and so it all sort of kind of comes together. You can see just like he lives his life the way that he served, and I really think that's what's going to come through in this book. So, really fun conversation. I enjoyed it. So show notes can be found over at gembapodcast.com. This is episode 632. Again, gembapodcast.com, and look for episode 632. Okay, enough from me. Let's get to the show. Chris, welcome to the show. How's it going?
I'm doing well, Ron. Thank you for having me.
All right. Yeah, my pleasure. All right. Well, so Chris, I know you know how we like to begin all of our episodes. It's with sharing a quote. So what do you got?
I'm actually going to share one that I have kind of tattooed on my arm here. It's a famous quote by Marcus Aurelius: "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's kind of how I look at life and live life and attack life. Reality is constraint. It's constraint dense, right?
Yeah.
Friction, uncertainty, opposition, failure. I mean, that's just our operating environment, right? And perception precedes action. So how you interpret an obstacle, I mean, just determines whether or not it degrades you or strengthens you. And your agency obviously is internal, right? You control yourself. You don't control your outside events. So I'm not saying obstacles are good. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that man, you properly process them so they can become an input for progress. That's really
man.
I believe that's how I interpret the quote.
Yeah, I'm 100%. Yeah, I mean the Stoics and Marcus Aurelius, man, they had it figured out, man, a long time ago. So
they sure did. And he fought through and lived through a very difficult time, and was considered one of the last great emperors. So figure maybe you can learn something from the guy.
100%. All right. Well, hey, Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your background and maybe how you got into your line of work that you're in now.
Sure. Yeah. I went into the military out of high school. So I went into the Army, enlisted, went into the Special Operations Command, serving in the Ranger Regiment. And from there, just wanted to challenge myself and just grow. I didn't feel like I had found my way or knew which way I was going, knew which direction to go. I kind of needed some guidance in that way. So I decided to volunteer for some of the harshest training just to kind of push me to my limits and see kind of what I was made of and capable of. And from there, went into college, got out of the military after my contract was fulfilled, and went to college and studied a couple of different things. Studied engineering, studied psychology, studied business. I had I'm very curious, so I something jumps out at me, and I want to learn more about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of led me down this path of just learning more and more and more. And graduated after my master's degree and decided to go out and work for companies and stuff like that, and really didn't work out the way that I held myself to certain values and to certain beliefs and to certain ways of operating and levels of performance. I realize not everybody's the same, right? Um, so I decided to start my own company. Had some companies with some partners, and so some ownership, some co-ownership. I liked growing companies. I liked scaling companies. I liked that challenge of
Mm-hmm.
getting it to the apex or the sweet spot. And
Mm-hmm.
then it was almost like I wanted to have it. Um, I don't know. I really enjoyed that part. So it was almost like it's time to move on to the next challenge. I didn't want
Mm-hmm.
to stay. And so it was either, sell or find some kind of merger or joint venture or acquisition or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of did that for a number of years in private industry. And then from there, um, sold my last company and went into academia. So while I was in that process of uh, entrepreneurship, it was trying to figure out what's the next step after entrepreneurship, because it's a dogfight, and it just goes and goes and goes, and it doesn't stop, or you're not successful. There's really no comfortable spot. So I knew that wouldn't obviously last a lifetime. It'll just burn you out. So what was next? So I did my doctoral program in the midst of that, and in 2022 decided to go into more writing, research, teaching, trying to pass on knowledge to the younger generation. I felt like when I graduated college, I didn't really have a lot of professors that could tell me what I was really going to expect out in the world. It was kind of just like, here's what the book says, here's what theory says, here's what this person said, 10, 20 years ago. But it's changing so fast. And so I thought, why not have somebody there
Mm-hmm.
that can tell you kind of, this is the way it really is. The
Yeah.
book says this, and that's great, and you can take these pieces away, but in reality, you're going to run into these other
Mm-hmm.
obstacles as well. And in doing so, my wife and I also released our first book on Saturday. So we
Yeah, we'll
published our
we'll get
first
into the
book.
book for sure, but I actually want to
Yeah.
circle back, and I don't know. I got a lot of friends. My brother-in-law, in fact, was military, and I know there's like some things you can say and some things you can't say and all that. But I mean, obviously, you were special operations, special forces, right? Is that correct?
It's
Okay.
it's so the way the Army is set up is they have USASOC, which is the U.S. Army Special Operations Command, and within that you have the Ranger Regiment, Special Forces. You have obviously your Tier 1 units. You have Delta Force and SOG and all these other clandestine forces. So it all falls under the Special Operations Command.
So, are you able to say like what you did and, and all that, or is it kind of like
Yeah,
I could tell
so
you, Ron,
I
but then I'd
served
have
in.
to, you know.
Yeah, no, I ended up. So I served in the regiment. So I was in the Ranger Regiment.
Wow. Okay. What was,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure there's stories to tell there, or what was that
yeah.
like?
So most of my time when I was in, so I went into the military, late '90s, early 2000, and all of that was kind of a setup for a lot of the stuff you see today. Believe it or not, the military has been strategizing. I mean, things 20, 30 years in advance. They're not just strategizing for next year. So I spent the majority of my time in the Balkans. So there's a big civil war with the breakup of, Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia and all that. So you now have Serbia, Bosnia, Macedonia, Kosovo, Albania, all those countries there in
Mm-hmm.
the Balkans. So I spent probably, I don't know, 80%, 75% of my career in the Balkans between Bosnia, Serbia, Kosovo, Macedonia, Albania. A lot of the training and what we would call like retrans and stuff we would do was with our partners like in Hungary and
Mm-hmm.
Germany and stuff like that, in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, most of the missions we performed were all Balkan related. I don't know if you remember Milosevic,
Mm.
um, back in the day, all the ethnic cleansing
Yeah, yeah.
and all that stuff. So that was kind of our mission, was to prevent kind of prevent communism from coming in and taking over the area, and also to try to get um, some kind of civil rest, right? Where they have some kind of organized government, they have laws, they have a police force, they have implementation forces, stuff like that. So it started with Clinton and it ended with Bush, and it kind of was to prevent bad from getting really bad, and hopefully putting some kind of government and law and order in place to prevent and give them an economy of some sort to prevent, Russia or Middle Eastern countries from taking over. Because when
Yeah.
you're poor and you don't have money, you need to get money and you need to get resources. And a lot of the stuff that they were using was old USSR stuff. So
Mm.
the fear was that that whole area would then be kind of engulfed by Russia.
Got it. What are you most proud of when you think back to your time serving?
I would say it's fighting for those that can't fight for themselves. You
Mm.
know, like that's why I believe we do what we do. Um, it's not for the glory, it's not for the medals, it's not for the book writing, it's not for the ego and the bragging. It's to it's a to fight for what's right and what we believe to be true, and also to fight for those that can't fight for themselves.
Yeah.
And it's, while I don't believe the US should be the world's police force, I do believe the US as a massive force should try to allow countries that aren't able to get to a point where they're sustainable to help them become
Mm-hmm.
sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because then it
100%.
just leads to more terrorism in a sense,
Right.
right? Because
Right.
they have to survive somehow.
So, all right. So you mentioned sort of in your opening there that that after the army you went into college. I'm curious, like, what was that like? What was that transition like? It's a very different, environment going from special operations into now you're a freshman in college. Like, what was that like?
Oh boy, I um I don't think I've ever, and I have kids and everything. I don't ever think I've been so aggravated in my life.
Okay.
I was uncomfortable. Um, I learned for the first time that you don't have to do something you're responsible for doing. I didn't know that was an option. I learned that as a freshman in college, that people actually didn't do what they were asked to do. It's like I didn't know that was even an option. Um, they go around in their pajamas. They don't comb their hair. They don't shower. They're late. They it was just it didn't make sense. I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone,
Yeah.
or it was a big adjustment also because, but believe it or not, when you're in the military and you're deployed so much, you kind of lose touch with what is up and new and hip in the US, right? So it's like it was almost like I was in a time capsule, right? So I'm expecting everything to kind of be the same. And then it's like, oh, that music's not cool, and those pants aren't cool, and that style's not cool, and that brand's not cool. So there was a lot of, I didn't know what movies were people were watching, so it was a hard adjustment. It really was. It wasn't because I thought I was better than anyone else. I that was when I realized I was different,
Yeah.
like really built different.
Were you able to
Um,
sort of like assimilate and find your footing, or was it just a struggle all the way through?
Man, I don't think I found my footing probably till like senior year,
Wow.
because we would have to work in groups, right? So you would do a group project, and if I didn't agree with what so and so turned in as their part of the assignment, I would just redo it. I was just, this is trash. I can't believe you think this is acceptable. I'm just going to redo it. And I could have been completely wrong. I could have done it right, but I just was so in. And then it was almost like, if the project's due at 10 o'clock on Thursday, why is everybody submitting their stuff at 9:40 on Thursday? It's like we have 20 minutes to assemble this and turn it in. Like, why is everybody waiting till the last second? So I think it just took me a really long time to just, you know, look, everybody has their stuff, right? Like, me having a bad day is going to be different than somebody else having a bad day. I had to learn that, right?
Hmm.
Especially having employees. A single mom that kid doesn't feel well, and she's cleaning up throw up, and the dog got out, or you know what I mean, like,
Yeah.
and they're just like, oh, I'm having the worst day ever, and it's like, there's no one shooting at you. There's no bombs blowing up anywhere. You're not in a, like, what do you mean you're having a bad day? Do you understand? So it really took
Yeah.
me a long time to understand the perspective of other people. A bad day to them feels the same as a bad day to me, with different occurrences, right?
Hmm.
So I think it took me at least 3 or 4 years to realize that. So it was probably my senior year of college before I was really able to understand not everybody's not everybody has the same life experience and looks at things the same way I do.
Right. Right. Well, so your book, I want to get into it a little bit here, so maybe the second half of the podcast here, and so I understand from just kind of researching your book a little bit that you've got this. Do you call it like 7R squared? Is that how you're?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah. So let's talk about the 7R squared framework. Like what's that all about?
so it's kind of interesting. So I'm in my second marriage, right? So I was married once before, and my wife and I think alike, but think different. But it's complementary in the way that we think different. So I was sitting and I told her I wanted to write a book, and she said she wanted to write a book too. So we were kind of independently writing our own books, and she read my book, script. I don't know. I wouldn't call it a book. She read my brain
Yeah, yeah.
dump, and they were only one word. So there was 7 words, and I said, I want to make this my framework. And she was like, well, you got to add more, like pop to it, or you got to add more character to it, or you can't just have a word. You can't just say research. You can't just say resilience. You can't just say reinvention. Like everybody does that. It has to be different. So she added the second word to making it 7R squared. So then it became rigorous research, and it became radical resilience, and it became relentless reinvention. And with her being in industry for her, whole life. I mean, she went to college while she was working, so she has all this industry experience, and me having this academic experience of writing a dissertation. I was trying to put a dissertation into a book, and she's like, people aren't going to read that. You got to tell stories, right? She loves Star Wars, and she loves, sci-fi. She loves the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and all
Yeah.
the, Harry Potter, right? So she's like, you got to add character. So we ended up writing it together, and so we decided that the rigorous research, which is evidence over assumption, right? A lot of people move on assumption, and they won't stop for a minute and pause. And radical resilience is strength built through challenge. You're not going to be, everybody sees the end result, and that's what they want, right? They see Elon Musk and SpaceX, but what they don't realize is what it took for him to get there, right? So there's this strength that gets built through whatever you want to call it, the struggles, suffering, challenge, obstacles, whatever it might be. Um, and then you have relentless reinvention. There has to be these moments in time where you reinvent, and it's evolution without ego. You have to be able to say, you know, the the iPod isn't the thing that's going to take us into the future. It's the iPhone, it's the iPad, it's the MacBook, it's the Apple Watch, it's the Apple TV, right? It's the reinvention. It's not just like zero, like Kodak, right? Everybody's going to want a picture. People aren't going to want to look at pictures on a screen. They're going to want to hold it in their hand. And they weren't willing to reinvent, and Kodak suffered for that. So you have to be able to go through that. And then the revolutionary reasoning is making better decisions under pressure, right? You have to, I believe people reveal their true character under pressure. When you are acting under pressure, that's who you really are. So you have to have this moment beforehand where you really are, true with yourself, right? Like Aristotle says, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is then an act, or not an act, but a habit, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to, live in that mindset. Refined recalibration is just intentional adjustments, right? Continuing to adjust, whether it's adjusting, upskilling your staff, adjusting with technology, adjusting with all these supply chain issues that we're having, right? It's these continuous adjustments that have to be made as a company because of the impact that's happening from the outside force. And then you have to have results, right? Results driven rituals, right? There has to be habits that carry your performance, right? If we're really good at, I don't know, if we're really good at making water bottles, why are we all of a sudden going to go into making iPhones, right? Like that doesn't make any sense. So it's like, what results driven rituals and habits that we have that we can carry performance? So while we have to reinvent ourselves and make the iPhone better and better and better, but there's rituals and there's habits that we have as people, but as our teams and as our company have, that continue us to strive and be excellent and set us apart from our competitors, right? We want to compare ourselves to ourselves yesterday, not to other companies, not to other people. And then the last one is ruthless relevance. It's real world impact that endure. I mean, look at COVID, right? Look at how many companies were destroyed by COVID. Nobody knew it was coming. Nobody was prepared for it. So it's having that ruthless relevance and real world impact that endures. So those are that's the 7R² framework. It comes from, I don't know, call it 30 years of world life. Well, you call it 60, right? 30 each. It comes
Yeah, yeah.
from 60 years of putting our blood, sweat, and tears into things, and having failures and having successes. I mean, I can count. I can count so many times that, are we going to make payroll this week, or is the business going to stay open? Are we going to get eaten up by a competitor? It's it's a struggle, it's a battle, but that's the journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes it exciting. That's what makes it fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's what creates greatness, in my opinion. Michael Jordan didn't wake up one day the greatest basketball player in the world. He got cut from his high school team,
Yeah.
and that turned him into the best.
I want to come back, if you don't mind. I want to dig
Yeah.
in on the results driven rituals. I'm super interested in that one. Like I'm like personally, just me as a man, as a person, like I am big into sort of routine. Like
Hmm.
I wake up and like within our continuous improvement, the stuff that our company teaches, we teach something called lean. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
Yep.
so like we call it standard work. Like companies like Toyota, have like very very specific things that they're going to do, and they do it the same way. So like my morning routine, I get up and I just unconsciously just follow the script. Like I don't even have to think, and really a lot of my life is like that. Even at work, and just the things that I'm doing are very sort of, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if they're overly regimented, and and it sort of hones me in sometimes because I'm just so used to doing what I do. But I want you to talk a little bit more about your thoughts on just this whole thing with I don't know, just routine in general and that sort of thing.
So I'm a firm believer in discipline, right? And it's called self-discipline for a reason, right? We have to create the discipline ourselves, right? So I went into the military, and sometimes people are like, "Oh, well, you're disciplined because you were in the military." Now, the military provides a discipline-driven environment,
Mm-hmm.
but if you choose not to be disciplined, you're not going to survive in that environment,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's people that get out of the military and decide not to be disciplined anymore, right? So it has to come from within, like you said, right? It has to be habitual. If I'm going to be disciplined and I'm going to live a lifestyle, or I'm going to perform at a certain level, there's certain things that I have to do in order to accomplish that. And if they're not habitual, then it's not sustainable, right? If I want to be an Olympic athlete, I can't just say, well, I'll train on Mondays, but I really don't want to train on Tuesdays. And then
Yeah.
maybe, you know what I mean? It's like it
Mm-hmm.
has to be a habit, it has to be a life decision, right? If a lot of things you can do habitually with the environment you're in, right? If you have to be to work every day at 8 o'clock, then that's a habit you just have to abide by if you want to keep your job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's technically not like self-discipline or self-imposed. Now, if you go out and you look for a job that it's very process driven, it's very regimented in the way that they perform and do things, then that's the right place for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go to a company that is very relaxed and everyone's writing on the walls and they come in when they want and they leave when they want, you're not going to be able to function at your highest level.
Right.
So then you won't have self gratification. You're not doing the company any justice, and you're not doing yourself any justice, right?
Right.
So the habit has to align with yourself, right, and your self discipline and your desired outcome.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody can show up and be average, right? And if that's what you want to do, that's fine, right? That's your choice. But if you want to show up and be great and not do the work that it requires to be great, then you can't get mad at the fact that you're not great,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have to make a change, right? I think Jocko Willing talks about extreme ownership, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to own your decisions, right
Mm-hmm.
or wrong, good or bad. You have to own them. And then you have to consciously make a decision to change them.
Yeah.
So it's those habits, right? And we, they say we're the you know we're kind of like the product of the people we keep close to us. So if
Mm-hmm.
you surround yourself with people like you, it elevates you. If you surround yourself with the people that are not like you, it either frustrates you or it brings you to a different spot that you don't want to be in.
Right.
And then you're living in kind of like a mental internal chaos, right?
Yeah. What was it? How to say? We are what we repeatedly do. Excellent then is a habit.
That's
Right.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
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 I mean, it's hard, right? I mean, discipline in a sense is a form of suffering. I mean, if you
Mm-hmm.
really think about it, it's easy to sit around and eat cake and donuts and drink soda and
Yeah.
eat fast food. I mean, that's easy, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to get up and exercise and eat healthy, and
Yeah.
it's a form of suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. Me and some good buddies of mine sort of do life together, and we'll go through some periods where some doing some pretty intense, whatever it might be, various spiritual and physical stuff all work together. And sort of our tagline is suffer well,
That's right.
but
Yeah,
you got to be able to suffer well. So
you do.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
gotta. What did the drill sergeant say? You got to make the hurt feel good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna go work out, man. I already worked out today. I'm gonna go work out again.
Go do it
Yeah.
again.
Oh man,
Yeah.
good stuff. Well,
Yeah.
hey Chris, this has been a lot of fun. I'm wondering, do you have any sort of like final words of wisdom or parting thoughts that you want to leave the folks with?
Oh boy, words of wisdom. I guess like I tell my students now, and I used to. There was a lot of like young engineers and stuff that I would try to mentor, and a lot of young project managers and stuff. You can see the fire inside them, and you can see that they have that spark, and I would just tell them, like just don't negotiate with yourself, like you 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 should know what you should be doing, and if you're not doing it, then you're making the choice, right? So the gap isn't really knowledge. The gap is honesty and discipline. It's looking in the mirror, being honest with yourself, and then having the discipline to make that change.
Mhm.
Because I mean, in reality, the moment you start lying to yourself, you distort reality. If you keep telling yourself, like I could sit and spit words of affirmation into a mirror all day. You're awesome. You're the best at this and you're the best at that. I mean, maybe it makes me feel better, but it's not reality, right?
Mhm.
And when your perception of reality is off, every decision you make, it just gets worse, right? So you take ownership in things, not necessarily because they're your fault, but because it's just about being responsible, and that's really, in my opinion, like that's where your power is, right? So
Mhm.
you stop negotiating with yourself, and you realize that by taking responsibility and taking ownership and being honest with, like, that's your power. and then focus on what you can control, right? We were talking about Marcus Aurelius at the beginning. Your effort, your standards, your consistency, don't focus on the outcomes. Bill Walsh wrote a great book, The Score. What is it? The score fixes itself, I think. Focus on each play, focus on each act, and then the outcome happens,
Yeah.
right? And
Trust the process. Another way of saying
trust
it.
the process. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think what really, the best thing you can do is to do something you don't want to do, even when you don't do it. When I wake up and I don't want to work out and I go work out, it could be the worst workout of like the year. But for some reason, it feels great because I did it and I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
Because, at the end of the day, you don't want to be explaining to yourself why you didn't do something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man.
I don't know if those are words of wisdom or not.
Man,
but
that's great.
Kinda,
that's fantastic. That's awesome.
That's the Chris Libutti way.
Yeah, I love it, man. So, name of the book again?
Performance Unleashed. It's on Amazon as of Saturday. So grab a copy, read it. Hopefully you love it, and if you don't love it, that was the part my wife wrote.
Fantastic. All right, man. Well, hey, Chris, I really enjoyed the conversation. It's been a lot of fun having you on. Maybe we'll have you on back down the road and do part 2 or something.
I would love to, Ron. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and I enjoyed the conversation.
All right. Okay. All right. Take care, Chris.
You as well. See you soon.
Thanks for joining us today. We know the path to continuous improvement can be challenging to walk alone. That's why Gemba Academy exists, not just to provide training, but to be your partner in problem solving. Whether you're just taking your first steps or leading a global transformation, our goal is to help you bridge the gap between knowing and doing. Beyond our library of Lean and Six Sigma resources, we're here to coach and guide you through your journey, whether that's through personalized support or joining us for a live training to get that immersive, hands-on experience. To learn more, go to gembaacademy.com.